they have the space now to do stuff, and they probably should, and they should start doing stuff. And it's just kind of surprising that they didn't do more this offseason than that. You know what I mean?
You know what this team needs? A kick returner, a punt returner. They were just a disaster in both aspects.
Down 16 days until the NFL draft. We're talking about here on 365 with your Mac guys. Joining us from the Delaware News Journal is our pal Martin Frank. Martin Frank, what are your draft measurables?
I always like guys with high motors. I'm a big motor guy.
No. I'm talking about you, not what you like. If you were on
Martin's
somebody's
a long
draft board
distance
right now,
guy,
what would the notes thereafter say about Martin Frank and his ability on the football field?
I can run 40 yards. I can run 40.
He can run a lot farther than that.
I can jump a little. A little.
My concern, there's some injury concerns for Martin.
I only do 2 cones. I don't do the 3 cone drill. I only do 2.
2 cones. That's good.
Coming back from an injury too. I'm a little concerned with that. How are we on that? 100%?
We're 100%. Yeah.
You always got to get the medicals, Martin. Number one. That's first and foremost. But it is mock draft season, and you put out your latest Eagles only mock draft at DelawareOnline.com. So everybody check that out. But all right, so it's time to mock Martin Frank. We'll start at the top.
Sure.
There's no way the Eagles are getting Sauce Gardner. Come on, even trading up. Is there? Jody's Jets are getting Sauce Gardner.
It just depends on how it falls. Like, every year there are quarterbacks who go early in the draft, whether they deserve to or not, and that knocks down like good players. I mean, I think the Eagles will go into it like identifying like 5 or 6 guys that they really want to draft, and if one of them falls out of the top 10 and maybe is in their range at like 11 or 12, they'll trade up to get the guy. And I just think it'll be Sauce Gardner. I mean, some other candidates could be someone like Kyle Hamilton or Kayvon Thibodeau. It just depends. Like if Malik Willis, quarterback, goes in the top 10, if Kenny Pickett goes in the top 10, maybe if there's a surprise, one of the other guys goes top 10. I mean, you're knocking good players down, and one of them could possibly get into that 11 to 12 range, and the Eagles could go up and get them. That's kind of what I was basing that on.
How high did you have the Eagles having to trade up to get their hands on Sauce Gardner?
I had them going up to like 12. I think that's the Vikings pick. I figure if they're going to get a cornerback, they probably need to get ahead of Houston. They probably need to get ahead of the Ravens at 13 and 14. So, I guessed around 12. And that way you're not giving up a ton either. I mean, you can give up like the extra 3rd round pick you got in the Saints trade. If you want to do that, or you can give up a 3rd round pick next year, or even that extra 2nd round pick in 2024. So they would have some options. I mean, they wouldn't have to give up a ton. I mean, I would consider it similar to what they gave up last year when they went up to get Devontae Smith. They gave up the 1st round pick and then, a 3rd round pick, something like that. I mean, they're not going to give up like 2 firsts or anything like that. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
My biggest argument was you got to go up to 11 then, Martin, because Minnesota's desperate for cornerbacks too. And if Sauce fell that far, they would probably go in that direction. But so let's stay with corner. Mm-hmm. And if you're forced to stay at 15 and Sauce Gardner's gone, say Derek Stingley's gone, would the Eagles still be comfortable, you think, at that position? Is that position such a need that they would have to start looking at Trent McDuffie or something like that at 15?
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, it just depends on how they set their board as far as cornerbacks are concerned. I mean, it seems to me that, Sauce Gardner is probably the best of the bunch. I mean, Stingley's really good. McDuffie's really good. Maybe they're better off. Like if they're staying at 15, maybe there's a better defensive end, a pass rusher or something that's available. Maybe they like one of the wide receivers, at 15. And then you get, maybe use your second round pick on the cornerback or maybe even the third round pick. I mean, it just depends on how they value how they rank all those guys that they want. I mean, they probably, like I said before, do have like 5 or 6 guys that they really want to draft. And if those guys are not available, then, I mean, if they're not available to the point where they want to trade up to get them, then, maybe they stay where they are, they take one of the players, and then they address the position later on.
Here's what scares me, Martin, about the upcoming draft and a position that you just touched on. If they don't take a defensive end with their pick, with their first pick, which they very strategically placed themselves in front of the Saints twice. They traded one pick to the Saints, so they're in front of the Saints and the Chargers pick in between, and then they're in front of the Saints again. So they can outmaneuver the Saints for the first pick, but the second pick, well, no, the Saints actually go before them, depending on how you look at the Saints' 2 picks. If they don't take a defensive end, and then the Saints do take a defensive end, and it comes back to them, and there's not a defensive end they like on the board, you ready to watch Derek Barnett play 50% of the snaps at defensive end for the Eagles again this year?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the draft. They can go in so many different directions. You think you have a great plan, and then all of a sudden, some team does something that you don't expect, and you don't get the guy you want, and you're relying on Derek Barnett. You're hoping Brandon Graham can play, like he did before his injury, and he's not 34 years old. Yeah, I mean, it's a risk. They could end up striking out, and having to go in a different direction, and they don't address defensive end until later in the draft, and at that point, you're kind of out of luck. But if you look at it, they did get the extra first round pick in 2023, and if they're looking at it as a multi-year process as far as the draft is concerned and building the team through youth. I mean, maybe you just wait until next year. Barnett probably won't be back another year, so you go get a defensive end in 2023 and you roll the dice.
Well, let's talk about the trade, Martin, before we get back to your draft and the thought process of where the Eagles are, which I always find kind of funny in that fact that, well, look at New Orleans trading with them. The Saints, obviously, and Jody brought up a good point. I kind of snickered that the Eagles made this deal and they're still picking ahead of the Saints twice, which is kind of funny. But the Saints think there's some players in this draft. The NFC looks bad as a whole compared to the AFC, certainly after this first couple waves of free agency. Why the heck is everything always about tomorrow with the Philadelphia Eagles? Why? I mean, are they that far off? Where they, if they thought like this in 2017, Martin, there might not be that Lombardi trophy in the lobby of the NovaCare complex.
I'm actually kind of surprised that they didn't do more in the offseason in free agency for that view. I mean, you look at the Rams. I mean, they won the Super Bowl, and they're going like 8 years without a first round pick. They went out during the offseason and they added a bunch of guys. I mean, they spent as much as they could possibly spend, and they're going for it again. And I guess it's just different ways to skin a cat. I mean, the Eagles want to build a team that sustains itself for more than a year or two and everything like that. So that's why they're kind of rebuilding their roster through the draft, and they're accumulating a lot of early round picks, and they're hoping they get those right. And within a couple years, they got a team that can contend for Super Bowl pretty much, for 3 or 4 years. You don't have to, if Jalen Hurts is your quarterback for the next few years, he's still on his rookie contract, and you can build a team around him without having to worry about his salary cap hit being so cumbersome that you can't do anything else. I mean, they have the space now to do stuff, and they probably should, and they should start doing stuff. And it's just kind of surprising that they didn't do more this offseason than that. You know what I mean?
Martin, as I just stated, we got 16 days until the draft. So 2 weeks, 2 days before the draft happens. They can be a key 2 weeks plus when it comes to leverage. Who's got the leverage? Still sitting out there, veteran free agents or the teams? The teams are going to sell, hey, listen, here's our offer. If you don't want to sign with us, that's okay. We're just going to fill the need in the draft. The players are thinking, all right, well, they'd rather lock it in than have to sweat the draft. The players they like are on the board, but they're not getting them. They come off just before. It's kind of depends on which narrative you want to believe, who's got the leg up in the leverage. Eagles going to do anything of note over the next 16 days in the free agent market? Will they be able to pull off the fact that they've got the leverage with a player they may be negotiating with, and the player thinks one in the hand better than two in the bush? Let me get signed before the draft actually happens. You think they got a free agent signing up their sleeve over the next 2 weeks?
I don't know. I don't think so. I guess the one guy people link with the Eagles is Tyrann Mathieu, who's still out there and everything. But that's a guy, like, I think some of those guys might even wait until like June or July, like before training camp, because there's no point in signing now and going through the spring practices. All those veteran guys kind of want to take that time to relax and recharge and everything like that. So you look at Steven Nelson. I mean, I think last year he was signed right before training camp started. So I wouldn't expect a guy like Tyrann Mathieu to sign right away. If he's going to sign with the Eagles, I don't think it'll happen in the next couple of weeks, because I think his market is still pretty high, and I think there's still like a couple other teams that are interested in him, which means that he might get a decent salary, and I don't think the Eagles are willing to pay that at this point. So the longer he waits, the more it benefits the Eagles. So in that case, I don't think it'll happen before the draft.
All right, Martin, let's shift back to your Eagles only mock, DelawareOnline.com. Everybody check it out. He just published it this morning. We have George Karlaftis, I like, at 18. The Eagles have 5 picks in the top 101. Yeah. And I think your picks all make sense. You get him a receiver in the second round, George Pickens out of Georgia, a running back, a big running back in the third round, Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M. A lot of people think he might be the best running back in the draft. So that's a devalued position where you can get some significant upside from as far as your offense goes. You got a safety at 101, Baron McKinley from Oregon. All these positions make sense. So if I said to you, there's one position you got to guarantee the Eagles are going to take in those first 101 picks, and one position you got to guarantee to me they're not going to take, which would be those particular positions?
Ooh. Let's see. Well, I would say the non-guarantee, like, they're not going to take a quarterback in those first 101 picks. I just think for this year they're committed to Jalen Hurts. And, I know I've seen stuff where, like, they were talking to Malik Willis's coach and everything like that, asking about him and everything. I think in that case they're just doing their due diligence, like, just in case he drops. Is he?
But let me follow up then, Martin. Say it's probably not going to be Malik, but say a Sam Howell or a Matt Corral or a Desmond Ridder dropped at 51. Eagles wouldn't get a little antsy and try to take one of those guys that late in the draft?
No, I don't think so. I think if they're going to go for a quarterback, they would do it in 2023, and only because Jalen Hurts didn't live up to the expectations this year, didn't improve enough, and they'll have the capital to do it. I mean, why take a quarterback that you wouldn't value as much this year when you can get a better one next year if you need one? And you also have to ask yourself, if you're drafting someone like Howell or Coral or whomever in that second round, you have to ask yourself, is he going to be better than what we have with Jalen Hurts? And if the answer isn't markedly better, then you're pretty much wasting a draft pick, in my opinion.
All right, Martin, I'm going to make a statement, and it's going to turn into a question for you.
Okay.
The Eagles pick at number 124. That would be in the 4th round. If I tell you before 124, the player will be taken. So if the Eagles want the player, they're going to have to take him in 3rd round at 101, which is a compensatory pick. It is absolutely the tail end of the 3rd round, and it's also the tail end of day 2. If I tell you if they want Matt Ariza, the punter from San Diego State, they have to use that pick at 101. He's going to be gone by 124. You can't wait till day 3 because I can see it now in the draft rooms after day 2 is over. The special teams coach gets up there and slams his fist on the desk and says, we have to have a better punter. We're into day 3. You guys got to use a pick. And he's going to be taken off the board before the Eagles go up on their 4th round selection. So if they want him, they got to take him at the tail end of round 3 and pick 101. Eagles got enough outside the box nerve and thinking to do something like that?
I don't see it.
Damn.
I don't think so. I mean, I think like your basic rule of thumb is never draft a punter or never draft
This
a
kid
kicker.
is beyond the basic rule of thumb, Martin. No kid has ever had a punting season like he had this year in the college football history.
Australia to find a punter, you know, like that's where they got him from. You can
How did Aaron
sign,
Cepas work out this year? They went down under to get Aaron Cepas. Their special teams was a deterrent for this team this year.
Aaron Cepas was darn good if the season was 8 games long.
Like the last 2 games. Last 2 games, he had a couple like 30-yard punts and less.
Yeah.
And stuff.
They do play 17 now, right? Your first 8 games less important than they've ever been before since we're playing 17.
Yeah, Nick goes for it on 4th down all the time anyway. You don't need a punter.
That's true. See, that's why they're not taking a punter. Martin hit on it. The Eagles are one of those teams that are going to go for it every single time when it's plus 50 pretty much. And it's 4th and short. So punter, you don't need a punter. Matt Ariza's got to go to one of those old school guys that's trying to flip the field and trying to play field position. The Eagles, Martin's right. They're not going to take him. They're going to go for it. We're going to go for it. So what do you got? You got Matt Ariza sitting there. Greatest punter since Ray Guy sitting there. What good is it? It's like having a nice base on your mantle, Jody. Well, yeah, it's nice to look at, but you're not going to use it.
Yeah, if you had a defensive dominated team, maybe you go for a punter and stuff like that. But the Eagles have always been about offense, and under Jeffrey Lurie and everything.
I'm thinking about this in reverse. I don't know what they're going to do with the defense. I don't know what Jonathan Gannon's going to be this year. I got to protect my flank because I got questions about the defense, and I want to pin the other team back whenever given the chance. If I've got to punt out of my own end zone, I think he can do something like that. That's why I want him.
All right, more important than any punter, Martin, is an Olympian. And the Eagles have an Olympian, Devin Allen, 110-meter star. Finished 4th in the Olympics one year. I think finished 5th the other. I joke about it a little bit, but you know what this team needs? A kick returner, a punt returner. They were just a disaster in both aspects. Could that be the plan for Devin Allen? He could catch the ball at Oregon back in 2014, which is a while ago, but nonetheless, is that the plan?
I guess. I don't know. If the guy can catch the ball, maybe he's got a chance to get that last wide receiver spot. I mean, they have gone that route with Olympians as a kick returner before with Jeremy Bloom, and that didn't really work out. So you would think they would have learned their lesson there.
He was a skier, though. This guy could run.
Yeah. That's true. But, skier, you got to go down pretty fast too. And, throw caution to the wind and, you can like fall, go over one of them moguls and, do a couple flips and everything like that. So that could help you on kick returns too. It just didn't in his case. So, I mean, it's one of those things. You got a 90-man roster going into spring. You take a few chances here and there. I mean, that's why they drafted Jordan Mailata in the 7th round in 2018. They're like, all right, he's one of 90 guys. If he develops, great. We've got a future stud, which of course happened. But if he doesn't, he's like, then the Eagles are like, well, he was one of 90 players. He just didn't make the team, and we move on. And it's probably the same situation here with Devon Allen. So, if he's a great kick returner and everything, they'll find a place for him. They'll use him. And if not, well, you still have JJ, right?
Not to return kicks. He can block, though. He can block.
Was the Eagles' return game handicapped by their overall special teams, or did they just not have somebody back there who could make a play? Do you put it on the individuals that were returning kicks and punts, or do you put it more on the special teams coach not getting his special teams unit up to snuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously Jalen Reagor had his issues in punt returns, especially.
Yeah.
They never really had a stud back there. After Darren Sproles retired as a punt returner, and there aren't that many of those guys, and much like punters, punt returns and stuff like that aren't and kick returns are kind of devalued a little bit too with the rules and everything. I mean, you're much better off like just, letting the ball go in the end zone and starting at the 25 than, risking someone come out and, maybe get tackled at the 10 or 15. I mean, it's not the same league that it was when, you had your great kick returners like Devin Hester and guys like that. It's just not the same. So, maybe they just didn't really invest that much in that position. And maybe with Devin Allen, they hit on a guy who could become like a great returner and everything. So, that's why you take a chance. But if not, then you just, let the ball go in the end zone, start at the 25.
Yeah, to answer Jody's question from my perspective, I'm not blaming Michael Clay. I mean, we saw Jalen Reagor. I mean, he was so just uncertain. He would, it just lacking confidence. And Martin, you're right. I mean, returners have been devalued because kickoffs, it's so easy to get touchbacks, and punters have become so good, at least punters outside of Philadelphia. You don't get many chances to return punts either. But it is nice to have a guy when you do get the opportunity. And nobody's complaining. You mentioned Devin Hester. I always talk about Cordaro Patterson. Nobody's saying to Cordaro, don't take it out. Don't take it out. Everybody's telling Jalen Reagor, don't take it out. It'd be nice to have a guy who could do something when you do get that rare opportunity. But I'll shift it to just an incendiary topic here in Philadelphia, even more than Alec Boehm saying he hates it here.
I love this place, by the way.
Yeah, I'm with after the mask mandate. I'm with Alec Boehm. I think he was talking about the mask mandate.
Oh, okay.
But we'll talk. Number 11 and number 43. You just mentioned Darren Sproles. How dare the Eagles give number 11 to Zach Pascal and Kaiser White getting Darren Sproles' number? Are you appalled by that, Martin?
I'm a little surprised about Sproles' number, but as far as number 11, it's time. I mean, you're not going to find that guy's number. You might as well give it to Pascal. He'll be there at least for this year and everything like that. And maybe, he'll do some good things with it. But yeah, I was kind of surprised they gave up Sproles' number that quickly. But yeah, if Kaiser White is as good as everyone says he is, and he has a good year, and maybe he deserves it.
Here's my thoughts on numbers. John and I talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
When the announcement came out on the return of Kelly Green for the Eagles, I was pumped. John didn't give a flying fart about it. Numbers, I'm just like John is with Kelly Green. I don't care. If you're going to retire the number, if it's going to be retired and never to be worn again, okay, fine, put it aside. If you're going to give it away at some point, give it away now. Who cares? You moved on. Somebody's got to wear the numbers. Get on with it. So I got no issue with either of those two guys getting numbers this year. Eagles who have come and gone. I'm not saying greats if we're talking about Carson Wentz, and Darren Sproles was very good. I can't even say great with him. All right, here's my next question for you, Martin, and it has to do with not numbers, but what the Eagles are going to do between now and the start of the season when camp opens up. Can they upgrade their roster enough to be put on a level with the Dallas Cowboys in this division? Free agency and/or draft. Be as optimistic as you want, but try and keep it somewhat realistic. Mesh optimism with realism. Can they get to a point between now and when camp opens up that we say they pulled even with the Dallas Cowboys in this division?
It depends on how you look at the Cowboys. I mean, are they as good as they've been in the past?
I don't think so. I think the Cowboys have gone backwards this year.
Right. Okay. So if you're going under that premise, I mean, maybe, I mean, yeah, Dak Prescott's still there. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott is still there. I mean, his contract is starting to become more of an albatross than a good thing, because now they had to lose three of their top receivers, right?
Yeah, they lost Cooper, Wilson. I don't know if they lost it there. Yeah, just Cooper and Wilson.
I mean, they still have CeeDee Lamb and they still have Gallup, but Gallup's coming off torn ACL. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're, the same Cowboys teams they've had the last couple of years. And those Cowboys teams, they didn't go very far in the playoffs, as we all know. So, yeah, I mean, if the Eagles do this right and everything, if they add, I still think they need to add a veteran in the secondary. Even if they draft somebody, yeah, they could be at that level. I mean, if you look at their offense, Miles Sanders comes back and has a good year. Hurts improves to where he's completing maybe 65% of his passes. Devontae Smith takes another step up, maybe gets to 1,300 yards receiving. I mean, Goddard's probably 1,000-yard receiving kind of guy. Maybe Quez Watkins becomes the number 2 guy like Sirianni and Howie say. It's possible. I mean, it can happen. It just, a lot of things have to go right for the Eagles in the draft, and maybe they need one more veteran type guy in free agency, which will probably come in June or July. In that case, yeah, they could be at the Cowboys level.
All right, last one from me, Martin. Follow Martin Frank at MFrankNFL on Twitter, DelawareOnline.com to read all his Eagles coverage. This morning, Eagles mock draft trade up for a special sauce. That gives you a nice little hint, as we talked about. You mentioned veteran help in the secondary. They lost Rodney McLeod officially. And Steve Nelson had a visit with the Houston Texans yesterday, but more so Rodney, Martin, because of his value off the field as well as both a leader and in the community. How much of a loss do you think Rodney McLeod will be for this team?
The leader and the impact in the community, I mean, that's going to be a big loss. But as far as the player, I mean, I think they can move on and get better there. He's 31 years old. He's a year removed from a second ACL surgery in the last 3 years and everything. I mean, I think, they obviously made the choice between him and Anthony Harris and felt that Anthony Harris probably had more to offer on the field than McLeod did. So I think he's replaceable on the field as a player. Not necessarily as a leader, but you still have Brandon Graham, you still have Kelsey, you still have guys like that who can, bring the team together. I mean, it's kind of like, when they let Malcolm Jenkins go. I mean, yeah, another great leader, great player for many years. But, I don't think they missed him that much when he went to New Orleans for this past, the past couple of years and everything. I think they were okay without him. And I think they'll be okay without Rodney McLeod on the field. They might, the leadership part, but you still have some pretty decent leaders in the secondary. Slade's obviously a leader. He's still at the top of his game, and Anthony Harris has been around, so he kind of knows the deal as well. I think they'll be okay.
All right, last one for me, Martin, has to do with Eagle preconceived notions. John likes to tell me all the time, and I think he's right, that Howie Roseman likes to win every trade he makes on paper. That when you evaluate it the day of trade and put it all down on paper, that Howie Rose came out on the long end of it. And most of us surely believe that about the deal that he made with the Vikings. If the Eagles have a chance that may not win on paper the way Howie likes it, but they can do a significant addition by subtraction. Our buddy Jeff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com said today, sources tell him, teams, as in plural, more than one, have inquired about Jalen Reagor. And I know if they trade him, it doesn't give him any salary cap relief, and it's going to be a day 3 pick at the earliest, and you're going to have given up on a number 1 draft pick after only 2 years and gotten a 3 back in return. If anything, how he's going to lose on paper, I still say they should do it. I say they should just move on from Jalen Reagor. John just took a pot shot at him, rightfully so, about his special teams play. There's no reason to bring this guy back. Do you have any fear that if the Eagles, first of all, do you think they can or will trade Jalen Reagor? And if they do you have any fear he'll come back and bite him in the butt, Martin?
I don't think they're going to trade him. I just think it's a lost cause as far as that's concerned. And you just pretty much ride out the rookie contract like they did with Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, like you said, nobody's going to give him more than a 6th or 7th round pick. And in that case, like, why not at least take a chance that maybe he figures something out this summer and everything and comes back a better player. I mean, they've already kind of made their move, by getting Zach Pascal. He's the number 3 guy. So Reagor's already the number 4 guy. I mean, he's not going to he's not going to get a whole lot of chances. And if somebody gets hurt, maybe maybe this gives him the boost he needs to have a decent season, resurrect his career or something. I don't know. I just don't see. It's hard to give up on a 1st round pick unless he's a total malcontent, and I don't see Reagor as being that kind of guy. I mean, he's always been kind of a decent character guy, good teammate, and everything. So unless the guy's like pouting or getting into trouble like maybe Josh Huff did when he was here, I mean, I just don't see them giving up on him like that. Unless somebody's desperate and offers you maybe a day 2 or like a 4th round pick, but I don't see that happening. So I think Reagor is going to be back, and I think they're going to find some kind of role for him. And maybe he does well, maybe he doesn't, but I think they come to a realization now that as a 1st round pick, he's not going to live up to those expectations, and you just deal with it.
Whenever we have him on, he stands out like a sore thumb. His information is always good, but maybe more so because he's a nice guy, and that just doesn't fit with the hosts of Birds 365. Martin Frank, always a pleasure. Appreciate you coming on board. We'll get you back up after draft for a little draft review. Thanks for doing it with us today.
All right, always a pleasure. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks,
Martin Frank here with us on Birds 365. No, sorry, Martin. Is Jalen Reagor a good guy? He just said that, right?
Yeah, he's a good guy. No, he's not a bad guy. But where I would say now, there is a little bit. I disagree with Martin. There is a little bit of sulking at times with Jalen, but I don't think he's a bad kid. Now, there's some things behind the scenes with his dad and Monte that give the Eagles some headaches because he's always pushing, and rightfully so. I mean, it's his son. He wants his son to do well. And he's pretty vocal about how the Eagles misuse. Think about it. If you're a little league coach, and you got the father of some kid. Oh, you got to play my kid. You got to play your kid. And we're like, well, your kid's not doing that well. We got this kid who's playing better. The parent's not going to see that. So that's a little bit of a headache. But yeah, I mean, look, the Eagles moved on. The 1st round pick is the more difficult part because the Eagles moved on early from Rasul Douglas, who's doing well in Green Bay now. They moved on early from Sidney Jones. I think they'll move on early from J.J. Ortega-Whiteside this year after the third year. So Martin's probably right as far as you're not going to give up after the second year. You might give up after the third year. But if they could get a fourth-round pick, I think they'd do it, even though it's not going to look good for Howie's ledger, as you pointed out, Jody.
I'll play football god here. 6th-round pick. You trading them?
I'd do it.
I
do
do
it.
too.
I don't know if the Eagles do it. They'd have to get a conditional 6th. Maybe if it could turn into
I'll give you that. Conditional 6th, go into a 5th if he plays 60% of the snaps.
I want 40. I'm playing Howie. If he plays 40% of the snaps.
Well, 50 it is. I went 60, you went 40. 50 it is. We got
There
a
we go.
deal?
I'll do that deal. Well, Howie sign on. I think he would. Because it's clear, as Martin pointed out, Zach Pascal's the 3rd wide receiver right now. They're going to draft a wide receiver in those first 51 picks. Might be 51. And that guy will immediately slot in.
Jalen Reagor's wide receiver 5.
Yeah.
Do we really need Jalen Reagor as wide receiver 5 here?
No. So, the writing is on the wall. If you can get something. Another route is to go the bust for bust trade route. In other words, Harry in New England hasn't worked out, and they brought in Devontae Parker. Maybe you trade Jalen Reagor for N'Keal Harry. Maybe you trade Jalen Reagor for the kid in Jacksonville, Chenault. They're looking to move on from him. So maybe player for player trade, bus for bus. Maybe that works out somewhere.
I like your thought of line of thought and thought of process. In the same position's hard. You're just saying our scheme will better fit their guy, their scheme will better fit our guy. A bus for an underachiever. Let's go there because you're hoping that the guy who shows up here in Philadelphia is not a bust. So an underachiever for an underachiever. I like the thought process. I think you got to do a different position.
Possible.
You need a wide receiver, and you're willing to take a little bit of a off the beaten path shot. We're in need of a safety, a corner, backup linebacker, something like that. Guy who, as per his draft status, is underachieved to this point. Make an argument that they'll be better in the Jonathan Gannon system. I could see something like that happening, but I think it has to be 2 different positions. I don't think he'd be wide receiver for wide receiver.
Yeah, just throwing it out there, something to mull. You could go. I think people forget you can go to player route because it doesn't happen that often.
Very rarely happens.
In a situation where you're trying to dump a first-round pick, maybe player for player makes a little bit more sense. And then, if you end up cutting the guy you get in August, hopefully people forget it by that time and say, all right, we just moved on.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We've got another hour to play here on Birds 365. And Ian Cummings of Pro Football Network going to join us coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll go that much more in depth on the 2022 draft here on Birds 3.